Kenny muted. Sorry about that.
Okay, we're live and about to record. Mr. Jacobs, we're live and we are recording.
All right, I'm going to call the South Orangetown Central School District's May 18th Board of Education meeting to order at 7:46 p.m. I apologize for the delay. We were having some technical difficulties since it's video conference meeting. I am present. I see Mr. LaMadrid is present. I see Mr. Henry is present. I see Ms. Lee is present, and I see Dr. Stepanian is present. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any board announcements, bearing in mind that we have committee reports later on the agenda? I see no indication of any board announcements, so I turn it over to you, Dr. Pritchard, for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Good evening, Board of Education. Welcome to the meeting this evening. Tonight we have a single agenda item for the superintendent's report, and it is our annual data presentation. And I would like to introduce Ms. Jean Corcoran, who will be providing us with the data presentation. And without any further delay, I would like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Corcoran.
Good evening, Board of Education, and good evening, Dr. Pritchard. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. Just give me 1 second so that I can start the slideshow. Okay, so thank you for this opportunity to present the data presentation for the May 2021. And I'm calling this one Beyond Essa because we need to look at our data beyond just the Essa measures. When data is looked at, we usually want to answer one of a few questions. We're either looking at what happened and we're using data to tell a story of what's taken place already in the past. We want to look at why it happened, and we want to use the data to test a theory. Or we're looking at what will happen in the future. We're going to use the data in order to make a prediction in the future. Or lastly, we might want to be looking at what should we do? We're going to use the data to inform our decisions. Tonight, we're going to discuss the New York State Education Department reports for the Every Student Succeeds Act, affectionately called ESSA. The purpose of this presentation is to give an overview of the latest ESSA report for South Orangetown and continue in our improvement process and goal setting. The most recent ESSA report was released in February 2020, and it included the data for 2018-19 and is publicly available at data.nicid.gov. Typically, reports released and accountability status released are based off of the data for the prior year. So the status for the 2019-20 school year, which was released in February of 2020, was based off of the data for 2018-19. Due to the pandemic, the 2020-21 accountability status was based off of the 2018-19 data because NICID rolled over the status from the previous year. So, in short, our status right now is good standing because it's been in good standing. So we're still in good standing. Yay. What are the other implications that this pandemic has had on ESSA? Well, New York State Ed Department suspended state assessments for spring 2020 and January 2021. They also suspended reviews of district performance for the 2019-20 school year. That's why our status rolled over. New York State Ed Department applied for a U.S. Department of Education waiver for the 2020-21 State Assessment Administration, and it was denied. It's expected that the New York State Ed Department will suspend reviews of district performance for 2020-21. This is currently being it's currently in the state assembly. It's already passed the state senate. It's currently in the state assembly. It's probably going to be taking place sometime next week, but we haven't heard any official official word on this yet. Since the state assessment waiver was denied, the state had to move forward with state assessments, but they made some changes in those state assessments. The first thing that they did is they abbreviated assessments for grades 3 through 8. ELA, math, and science were offered this past spring. The June 2021 Regents exams will be offered for Algebra 1, Earth Science, ELA, and Living Environment only. All other Regents exams are suspended. All Regents exams for August 2021 will be suspended. All students who successfully complete with a passing grade any course that typically ends in a Regents exam during the 2020-21 school year or during the summer of 2021 will be given an exemption status for that Regents exam. This includes all the students who may take any of the 4 Regents exams that are being offered. What New York State basically has done is set it up so that there's really no benefit for students to take these Regents exams, but there is also no harm to students if they choose to take these Regents assessments. Even though our accountability status may roll over, we still need to perform our own measures of accountability. If we look at the Essa Measures, the Essa Measures consist of 7 areas: chronic absenteeism, graduation rate, college, career, and civic readiness, English language proficiency, student academic achievement, student growth, and academic progress. The last 4 that are on this list are based off of state assessment results. So let's start off with chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is defined as students who are absent 10% or more of the days that they have been enrolled in the school. For 2018-19, there were 233 students, or 7.7% district-wide, who were chronically absent. In 2019-20, there were 262 students, or 8.9% of the student body. That was based off of September 2019 through March 2020, when the pandemic hit. Year to date for 2020-21, we have 189 students, or 6.63% of our student body, that have been chronically absent. When we look at this data, that's a very good number in terms of it's moving in the right direction. But when we look at this data by building level, we see that the data is not uniform throughout. While absenteeism at the elementary school level has definitely improved, the absenteeism at our high school is definitely not improved right now. It's definitely of a concern. And if we look at the comparison by numbers of students instead of by percent, compared with last year's numbers, at William O. Schaefer, this year we have 17 students as of today that are chronically absent at William O. Schaefer, 18 at Cottage Lane, 41 at South Orangetown Middle School, and 101 at the high school. By far, this is the set of numbers that are most concerning for most of us. When we look at this, we want to be able to drill down to look at why are these students absent and what can be done about it? What are their needs? So the causes of these absenteeisms are as varied and as unique for each student as each student is. Some of the reasons why these students may be chronically absent, though, is that our students might be working, might be taking care of a sibling. They might be suffering from some adolescent mental health concerns during a pandemic. Some of these students are suffering from poor sleep hygiene, staying up all night and then not able to get onto their Zoom class in the morning. Some of these students are suffering from Zoom fatigue. All of these are critical situations that need to be addressed. And the team at the high school is doing everything in their power to address each of those concerns. They start by reaching out to the students to connect with the students. They also try to move the students to being in-person learning as soon as possible, along with referrals for mental health support whenever is possible and whenever is needed. The graduation rate is our next metric. Our four-year cohort for 2017-18 was 96%. Sorry, I didn't mean to read that. Our 2020-21 graduation rate data isn't on this slide. It hasn't been determined yet because graduation hasn't happened yet, but it appears that we are in line with prior years. Our next metric is college, career, and civic readiness. College, career, and civic readiness is based off of the type of diploma that students get and some of the other additional metrics that get added in for each of those. Last year, we had 277 completers in June 2020. 98 of those students had Regents diplomas, 177 had advanced Regents diplomas, 2 students had commencement credentials, and 4 students had a seal of biliteracy. I add in that metric of the seal of biliteracy. I wanted to point that out because that is still a relatively new metric that we are, a new seal that we are offering at South Orangetown. The June 2021 college, career, and civic readiness is still yet to be determined, but again, it appears to be in line with prior years. One of the things, though, that we might want to look at when we're talking about the college, career, and civic readiness is our AP results. If we look at the enrollment data for our AP courses, our enrollment data for our AP courses from 2019-20 to 2020-21 has maintained pretty steady at 33%. The next graphic that I've given over here is our distribution of AP scores. And you'll see that most of the students who sit for the AP exam do get do get a score that is qualified to receive college credit. In 2020, of the 617 enrollments in AP courses, 522 or 85% of them resulted in students that took the AP exams. Many of these courses are dual enrollment courses. So in addition to them being AP courses, students might be getting credit from Stack or from SUNY New Paltz or any of the other colleges that we offer dual credit from. These students took these exams during the height of the pandemic under unique and rapidly changing conditions. The next metric that I'm going to talk about is English language proficiency. English language proficiency is the metric that's based off of our English language learners. The NYSESLAT, or the New York State English as a Second Language Achievement Test, was not offered for spring 2020. It was offered this past spring, and it's continuing through June 9th of this year. The NICESLAT results from 2018-19 are in this, give this distribution for the data between students being classified as to their level of entering, emerging, transitioning, expanding, or commanding. When students are new to the district, the NICETEL, or the New York State Identification Test for English Language Learners, is administered. During the 2019-20, 38 students were administered this assessment, and this is the breakdown or distribution of the levels for those students. During 2020-21, 26 students were administered the NICETEL, and this is their distribution. Again, because we didn't test the because the NICESLAT was not offered last spring, these students who took the NICETEL in 2019-20 did not get to show how much they have grown in their program. The next place that we want to look at is the last three, which is academic achievement, student growth, and academic progress. These are the three big ones that are usually based off of the state assessments, Regents assessments, and the 3 through 8 assessments. With those being suspended, we need to look at other data of how we're measuring this. Teachers measure academic achievement, student growth, and academic progress continuously throughout the year. That's part of the educational process throughout the year. Some of the formal assessments that we use as a district are the STAR Early Literacy, which is given to grades kindergarten and first grade, both in the fall and the spring. STAR Reading and STAR Math, which is given to grades 2 through 8, 3 times throughout the year, fall, winter, and spring. Fontes and Pinell is, or running records for reading, are the reading level assessments that are done throughout the year, grades K through 5. And then formative and summative and project-based assessments are done continuously throughout the year, kindergarten through 12. So if these are some of the data points that we have, how are we using this data? Well, the first thing that we need to be using this data for is to assess learning loss and learning regression. There's a difference between learning loss and learning regression. Learning regression is students losing things they've already learned. Learning loss is they're not where we expect for them to be, and they haven't made the gains that we would like for them to be making. Teachers are using data from formative and summative assessments continuously to evaluate student progress and adjust and make adjustments in learning experience for individual student needs. Grade level data team meetings, kindergarten through 5th grade, met to look at data and talk about grade level trends as well as implications for moving forward. I have to say that I feel like these grade level data team meetings were some of the best that I've been part of, and they really were energetic. They were very energetic. So what did we look at? Well, we looked at 3 sets of data in each of these grade level teams. I'm actually going to go back a minute while I talk a little bit more about these grade level teams. We looked at 3 sets of data for each of these grade level teams. We looked at the Fontes and Pinell, we looked at the STAR data, and we also looked at the report card data for grades for the first trimester and the second trimester. We looked at it for the entire grade level and then answered the simple questions of what do you notice? What do you wonder? And we got some really fantastic discussions going from that data. So let's look first at the STAR data on a district level. Those grade level data teams looked at it at the grade level. I want to look first at it though from the district level. On a district level, this is the data for our STAR reading with a comparison of the fall and the winter. Our students are currently doing the spring assessment, and we will be adding that to this graphic as well. And the STAR math, again, for fall and winter. it's good that the percent of students that are above benchmark is going up. That's good. Yeah, it might not be as much as we would like right now, but it is increasing. It's moving in the right direction. Okay, so this is the really scary one, and I apologize for this one, but this is actually the one that I got most excited about. So this is the Fontes and Pinell data, and I want to explain a little bit about what this is that we're looking at here. So the first, this top graph up here are the March 2021 F&P levels, Fontes and Pinell levels, for all of our students, kindergarten through 5th grade. So the grade levels are indicated by different colors. So the kindergarten is this shade of blue, the 1st grade is this orange shade, 2nd graders are in gray, 3rd graders are yellow, 4th graders are the bright blue, and 5th graders are the bright green. So this is our current distribution, well, as of March 2021 of our students. What I've indicated underneath here, I've placed the blue dot for the kindergarten underneath. That's considered grade level for kindergarten. Now, you have to recognize it's an approximation. It's not something that's an exact of like, this is the cutoff and, below this is no good and above this is, because it's about, we're dealing with students. We're not making widgets. So kindergarten is approximately or about the B level on Fontes and Pinell. 1st grade is approximately or about level G. 2nd grade is approximately or about level K. 3rd grade is approximately or about level N. 4th grade is about level Q, and 5th grade is about level T. When I met with the grade level teams, we looked at this data by grade level, but then we compared it to 2 other sets of data. The first was we looked at, so what I've done on this is I've compared it with the March F&P levels for last year, for 2020, and for 2019, so that we can see what the trends are. I mean, some of the visuals on this, I feel like are pretty striking and remarkable, and kind of interesting to be able to drive home our points. When we looked at this by grade level, we looked at the current, let's say, for example, 3rd grade F&P levels. We then looked at the same grade level, 3rd grade, for March of 2020. We also looked at the 2nd grade for March of 2020, so that we got to see same students and their growth and same level and do what the comparison was, keeping in mind the whys for all of this, for why the results are what they are there are a lot of confounding variables in this. The pandemic and all of the trauma that's associated with it. Hybrid learning model is very different from the form of learning that these students have been used to. The media of assessment that took place. And this, what I'm giving you right now, were the results of the conversation at that grade level meeting. The media of assessment. So in other words, students now were the F&P levels assessments were being conducted on screen instead of on a book. There's a time constraint that was involved when you're testing in this environment on Zoom, and when it's not in person. There was a change in the assessment leveling, trying to level out where we were for this year. This was also the 3rd year of Teachers College at the younger elementary levels. So, what effect that had was definitely, we definitely don't know how much that had an impact of it. One thing that the teachers did say throughout was that while these results are definitely lower than where we want or expect students to be, they're not as terrible as we thought they were going to be. So that was kind of, felt a little bit better. At the secondary level, the secondary assessments that are done, traditional assessments were taking place in classes throughout the year. Questioning techniques, homework, essays, exams, quizzes, exit tickets, do nows, etc. Teachers have used the same traditional assessment, but hybrid learning has put an increased focus on non-traditional assessments throughout this year. So project-based assessments were being used throughout the year as both formative and summative assessments, but we also still have, especially at the high school level, AP exams that are still taking place in both traditional and non-traditional settings. I think today is the first day of the digital AP assessments. Today it was the computer science assessment, and students are taking that assessment digitally this year. Finally, the last metric that we want to look at is culture and climate. And I just wanted to mention that we will be administering a district-wide school climate survey at the end of the month of May. The survey will be sent to parents, secondary students, instructional staff, and non-instructional staff. The survey will be consistent in nature to past climate surveys so that longitudinal data can be studied. With that, I thank you for your attention, and we have an opportunity for questions or clarifications.
Does any board member want to go first with questions? I'm going to say Dan was quicker with the hand.
Go for it, Dan.
Thank you. Terrific presentation. Appreciate the update. And I'm sure, I mean, this feels like just the, some of the key slides. I can only imagine the wealth of data the team is actually digesting and thinking through. So it'll be interesting to see after you've had more time to digest it and work through it, what the next steps will be. But I was curious, I think on the slide where you showed the F&P results, you had the historical comparatives. I don't think I saw it on was it the STAR data where you showed just the season over season? I was curious if we could go, if you had it on it correct, right? If you had a comparison to, further back.
So I had done that on the December presentation. I had done the longitudinal comparison for STAR reading and math. I didn't include that in with this, but if you check that report, it shows where it was. We did run into a little bit of a glitch in the STAR Renaissance program for one of the years for Cottage Lane, but I think we fixed that. But if you would like for me to send that to you, the updated, absolutely, I can do that.
It'd be helpful. And I think you had mentioned spring results are occurring now. Do you know what the timing is of having that formulated?
So that window is open until June 5th, I believe. So students are taking it now through June 5th at Soames, at Cottage Lane, and at William O. Schaefer.
Okay. I would just ask it at the appropriate time when you have the results tabulated, if we can get it in the board report.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's it, Dan? Okay. Oh, Kara, did you have your hand up?
Sorry. You go ahead, Christine. I'll go after you.
Okay. So in the chronic absentee, I also have to say, Jean, it's great, great presentation, and it's always great to work off of data because the numbers don't lie, as we all know. So really appreciate your work. In the chronic absenteeism, you did discuss how in the high schools the numbers did increase, although overall the numbers did decrease. So I see when you did the breakdown that it had improved in William O. Schaefer, Cottage Lane, and Soames. Were there any conclusions to that? I mean, what was the driver remote learning? I mean, what did we learn from the lower level schools and the middle school?
So one of the things that was discussed at the lower levels was that because of hybrid learning and because of remote learning, students tended to be absent less because if parents were going on a vacation, they took their kid, they took that with them. So that was one piece of it. The other piece of it was that in the elementary level, parents were sitting next to students, or a caretaker was sitting next to students to make sure that they were logging on. That's not taking place at the high school level. But I also wanted to mention that at William O. Schaefer in particular, that was the chronic absenteeism, especially amongst specific subgroups, was one of their focus areas last year. And unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, we didn't get to see whether the results were from the efforts that they were making or from the model of learning, and I'd like to think that some of it is because of the efforts that are being made to make parents more aware that just because it's kindergarten or first grade, being in school is still very important.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lee, I'm sorry. I want to allow at least some of the folks in the room who oversee some of the areas of responsibility as it relates to some of these topics have an opportunity to weigh in, if that's okay. I'm sorry.
Sure. No, go ahead.
I think Dr.
Yeah, just to add to that, thank you, Jeannie, for everything. Just one piece I would add to that is one of the things we've done in the reaching out, using the Family Engagement Center and the onboarding of families, is describing just what Jeannie talked about, which is the idea that vacations during the school year are not acceptable. So with the hybrid learning model, maybe they were a little bit easier, maybe. But what we've really focused on is making sure that, especially for our newcomers who aren't familiar with our education system, that they understand that missing school is a big deal. And, trips to various places can take, upwards of 10 to 15 school days and really impact students. So we've made an effort, especially at William O. Schaefer, to address those types of leaves for students in general. And I think last year, William O. Schaefer did an amazing job of that. And I know AJ Walker also worked on that. Jeannie said it when she presented it, but I want to reiterate, one of the key components of the William O. Schaefer and Cottage Lane numbers decreasing and our high school numbers increasing is that there is a feeling of family respect where our high school students were taken care of and putting the younger students on their Zooms, which caused the older students to sometimes miss and not be on time for their Zooms. So it was the unfortunate battle of the pandemic. The great idea of keeping the older kids home with the younger siblings made sense for our parents. However, the impact of that has now shown for some of our students who were amazing and really, to the best that they could, kept up with their work, but they were also babysitting and getting their younger siblings on when the parents couldn't do that. So that's, I think, has really one of the major impacts at the high school.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I also hear from the other districts in the Rockland County School Board. So it's definitely a trend.
Right.
It's consistent. So it's not just isolated to South Orangetown. But as a follow-up to that, then with the enrichment programs that we've begun and also planned for the summer and into next year, is that where we'll be able to focus some of those the opportunities that come from those high schoolers that didn't were unfortunately chronically absent and hopefully not far behind. I would suspect they're behind because they weren't in classrooms. So is that where we're going to be targeting some of those individuals?
Yes, both socially, emotionally, where they became detached and more of a caregiver, right? So now making sure that socially, emotionally, they're back. And I know Brian can speak to the academic supports because the two programs are lining up for those students.
Yeah, we're really offering a well-rounded program that will address both their academic and social emotional needs. And we're going to try to get them to come in person. So those are the students that are being targeted across the district, as well as other students for other reasons.
Okay. And then of the another follow-up, I think the number was 70% of the students came back to in person at the high school level.
Yes, Yes, it was about that.
About, yeah, so how does that number compare to the 101 that are chronically absent? I mean, are those individuals still, on remote learning? Or has a good percentage of the 101 students come back to in-person learning?
So I have not analyzed that. I have because they just came back last week and I was updating this based off
Okay.
of yesterday. So, there's still a few moving parts on that stuff, but that will be part of the analysis. One of the things that we're doing is a system has been set up so that every 2 weeks or so, a shared document at the high school and one, I just set this up with at the middle school last week, but a shared document at the high school, I'm updating who the students are, running the chronic absenteeism report and updating the document, highlighting in red any new students that are on the list and dropping down to the bottom, the students in green that are no longer chronically absent, and indicating on there what the breakdown is of what kind of absences they were having, as well as what classes they're, what's the consequences of their absences, what classes they're not being successful in, and that kind of stuff. The counseling office at the high school is using that data to then, and then making contact the pupil personnel services at the high school. And what we've seen is that number has come down actually from, I want to say from February. So we're at 101 right now, but that number has actually come down. There's been approximately, there's a fluctuation, but it's been, 10 come off and 2 more come back on, or 5 come off and 3 come back on, so it is a lot of moving parts on that.
Okay. It's also good to hear that we're using the data, we're being proactive, and it's allowing us to, not have too much time lag behind, so we can't at least address it very quickly. So that's very positive. Just two other questions. I just want a clarification. The AP enrollments, the 617, those are per class, right? That's not per student.
The
Correct.
617 enrollments are
Per course.
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it could be,
Correct.
5
Correct.
of them could
Correct.
be one student.
The graphic on the left is the students that are enrolled in at least one AP class. So we have 330 this year, 354 last year who were enrolled in it. Those were students that were enrolled in at least one AP class. So I kind of tried to present it in both directions.
Okay, all right. No, it's always a good clarification. I know Lonnie always asks that question, so I jumped ahead on that one. The STAR data, I thought it was interesting to see that the reading levels were lower than the math levels, because I seem to remember historically they've been the other way around. Like our reading numbers were higher, the greens were higher on the reading and lower on the math. Am I remembering it incorrectly?
So I don't think so. That's not what I've seen. But I'm only a couple of years in on this. So I've only been looking at it. Anybody in the room have?
It's more, yeah.
It's different data.
It's more the state assessments that was the case, Ms. Lee.
Oh,
In
okay.
our state assessments with the STAR assessments, this is kind of what we've seen.
Yeah,
And it's not grade level, so it's important. And I think, Jeannie, I know you explained that, but when you see that 62% in the green, that is not a grade level equivalent comparison, whereas the state assessment data is.
Yeah, this is above benchmark. It's not a grade level. It's above benchmark. And the other thing is that, nope, I'm going to stop there.
Hey,
Okay.
Ms. Lee, you may also remember from the past presentations, we broke it out by grades. So you did see there were certain cohorts
Right.
that would be lower. So, that math score at the middle school tended to be lower than, say, at the other schools. So that's probably what you're remembering.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then one last quick clarification, the digital exams, you had mentioned some of the AP classes were having their exams in digital. Is that done like all in the classroom, or, or it could be at home or any
Students
other
are taking
location?
that at home.
Okay.
Yeah. It's,
All right.
in fact, I'm not even, I think, George, were you setting something up for that in the school also?
Yeah, so we set up all the Chromebooks with what's called a secured browser. So before they even can log into the Chromebook, they log into the AP exam and it locks it. So they can't use any other resources while they're taking that exam.
On that computer. They could have another computer.
They can
Okay.
have something else on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi, you just answered almost all of my questions, Christine. Christine and I are thinking.
I'm sorry.
No, that's great. We're thinking in the same way tonight. I too was focused on that 101 students in the high school, the chronic absentee. And I was thinking about how that number compares to other high schools in Rockland. And then, Christine added that has come up at the Rockland County School Board's meetings. But I do wonder, looking how that, it would be interesting to see that data compared to the other high schools. And then if it's available, even larger than that, how it compares to other high schools in New York State. And just to try and really figure out what the reason is. Is it something specific to us, or is it, a larger cause of the pandemic? And then breaking that down too, which you already addressed. And I'd love to see the breakdown of that in grade level and who virtual versus non-virtual. I think that would be really helpful. And then the only other thing I was going to say is then looking at the F&P scores, it is alarming when you look at it, but then when you really, really look at it, you're right. I mean, it could be a lot worse. And I'm thankful that we already have a plan set up, that the institutes, the programs that are going to be running this summer to target those youngest readers, and knowing how quickly that those kinds of interventions can really flip those scores back around. So I think that's really exciting. And so everything else that I had was already addressed. So thanks. Thank you so much. This is really informative.
I just had a quick sidebar with Dr. Tessick. Dr. Stepani and I'm pretty confident that the comparative data as it relates to the chronic absenteeism will be available on the New York State Education Department portal.
On the website, the issue is that schools are navigating the way they took attendance and whether or not that's an issue, right? So schools are only required to report one attendance mark for the day. And what's been difficult for some high schools has been what period they did it in. If they did it period one, that became a more difficult piece. If they did it later in the day, was it a false positive? So there's lots of conversations, both at the county and state level, about attendance data. And what we've been advised to do is to do exactly what Jeannie's talking about, which is internalize your data, focus on it, address the students, and to look at the state data, but to keep in mind that every district's pandemic story and opening was dramatically different. And so that could have a grave impact on the state data.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I thought a lot about attendance data this year, especially last spring. I thought about it all the time, and just, personally, when I would forget to mark my kids absent, even though we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. And, and thinking about how impossible that is to keep that consistent across the whole state. So that's a really good point. Thank you.
And the other thing to note is the state changed some of the guidance mid-course. Actually, Gina, I think it was February. So a lot of districts are still in the process of going back and recoding the various types of absences. So there is going to be quite a bit of variability between districts, I'm sure.
Mhm. Yeah, New York State decided in December rather, but it took a while that they didn't just want absent or present. They wanted to know whether students were present, the modality that they were learning by, whether students were present in person or present remotely. And luckily enough, we had been indicating distant present, remote present, right from the beginning of the year. We had been, working that way from the beginning of the year, but we had to do a little bit of fixes on the others. There are many districts that weren't recording that at all. So it's been quite the scramble to try and recreate all of that data.
And I just want to ask one clarifying question. I'm just looking at the chart right now, and I initially was assuming that the blue was last school year.
Yes.
2019, 2020. And then the orange is the 2020, 2021 school year?
Correct.
Okay. When I was looking right now, I thought, well, does the orange start in 2021? So did that
No.
jump from December to January?
No.
Okay.
The blue
That's
is
what I thought.
the year that ended 2020,
Right,
and the orange is the school year that ended in 2021.
right. Okay, thanks.
And to keep in mind that the blue does not include March through June. So we stopped doing that type of attendance, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeannie, because we didn't
Correct.
take attendance during the first piece of the closure. So
Correct.
that absentee rate, again, was 10% of the number of school days that we were in session prior to the state closure. Versus this year, where now it's been spread out, right now, thank goodness, we're into May and into June. The hard part is if kids already missed the 18 days, even if they return back to the high school, because now their siblings are back in school and we've got things in play, they still might be considered chronically absent because they've hit day 18, which is about the 10% number that they'll get dinged for. So I just share that because I think that's important to note, that some of these kids, even if they come back every day between now and then, chances are they've missed 18 days.
Okay, Ms. Corcoran, thank you very much. Very nice presentation. I guess my comment would be on slide 15, the F&P scores. And my comment would be, with all the grades combined, I think it's a little more difficult to determine or discern trends. And I was just, not that you want to add a ton more slides, but I think it would be interesting to see, something that you mentioned earlier, like maybe like first grade for 2019, second grade for 2020, third grade for 2021 separately, just to see the trend for that particular cohort. It would probably be an extra 6 slides, and I know you're trying to keep it to a manageable level.
Yes.
But I think there's such a wealth of data here.
Yes.
And there's so many ways that you could slice and dice it.
Yeah. So please keep in mind that that's the exact data that I did share with the teachers on each grade level.
Okay.
But I wanted to keep this to be the broad overview of the district as a whole. And that's why I have, and I know that, yes, this is definitely a little bit more challenging, but we can still kind of see and a little bit of the colors. Yeah, but I agree with you. And, let me see what else I can share into board reports.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess it's my turn now. So going back to the secondary absenteeism, the 101, I think we're all focusing on that just because of the alarming nature that it is. My question on this is, you've answered one, that it's a rolling 10%. So there are students that can roll off and roll on as we get more days enrolled under our belt. But one question I have is, what's the distribution of the 101 students? Is, the majority of these students, right at 10%, or is the majority of these students upwards of 15 or 20%?
The majority of these students are right at 10%. the majority. It's not, you definitely do have some that are in the upper percentile, but most of them are right at the 10%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, the 10% is the benchmark that it seems to be that it's the key number, rather than if you went to 12% for some reason, that this number could be drastically different.
So when I run it, I don't run it just on the percent part of it. I run it based off of, as of yesterday, we were at, and now let me make sure that I have the right number. I think we were at day 152 of school. So I looked at students that have been out 15 or more days. So that's how I'm coming up with the numbers, these preliminary numbers. There are some students that, maybe they weren't enrolled for all 150, what did I say, 52 or 54? Maybe they haven't been enrolled for the entire 152 or 54 days of school. So those are students that we have to find in other ways. And that's where we rely on the teachers because it's not just a matter of, we're giving reports to counselors or to the prevention counselor or anything like that, and then they're going forward with it. Teachers are also involved in these conversations and flagging, when students absenteeism long before it hits the chronic level, where hey, this kid's been absent, I can't get in touch with them, and having those more intimate conversations about students that they have concerns.
So my other question then, within these 101 students, like what was expressed was that these are secondary students that could be caring for a sibling or another family member and so forth. But at the secondary level, when a student's absent, there's more of a responsibility to make up the missing work. So of these students that are absent, do we know, are they, making attempts to make up the missing work, or is it just an absence that's going by the wayside?
So, that's the rest of that spreadsheet that I was referring to before. On there, it's the students are listed along with the number of absences that they have as of this generation, and what their history of attendance has been, along with what courses they're currently failing or falling behind in. So that becomes a part of the conversation that's happening with the students of is there something that they can make up, yeah, and what are those opportunities?
Keep in mind too, sorry, Lonnie. I was just gonna share that, keep in mind that for the high school classes, there is an attendance requirement. So when they start to hit day 5, day 7, day 10, they get triggered with an administrative letter that says, your absentees are creeping up and you might be denied credit for this course. So that is something that pre-pandemic, we always do. We continue to do that because we didn't have necessarily a waiver for that. So those letters kept being sent out. Students can then appeal it to the building administrative team, and they do that. And at that point, to your question, it is made very clear about how to appeal a grade, what needs to happen, including the makeup work. Whether it's they get assigned an academic center, or they go to some tutoring pieces, or they go to office hours, whatever it takes. That's part of the conversations that the administrative team has or counseling team has with regard to earning that credit, especially if they're teetering on the number of absences required to earn that credit.
Okay. And then the other question I have, going back to the diplomas.
This part?
Yes. So the 4 seal of biliteracy,
Yes.
that's in addition to the other 3 types of diplomas above that, correct?
Correct. These are not, they're not separate. They
Okay.
get a seal of biliteracy with their Regents diploma. They get a
I
seal.
did the math, and that's the way it seemed. I
Yeah.
just wanted to verify. And then the other question I have is, so if the students aren't taking the Regents exams because they're not offered, and they're just taking the regular class final, do they still get a Regents diploma?
Yes, yes. The exemption that is being presented for the Regents exams satisfies all diploma requirements. That includes satisfying advanced diploma requirements as well.
Okay. All right. So I appreciate the presentation. It's a lot of numbers.
It's a lot of,
I guess the other thing I'll say is that, although like the comment on the elementary results, was not as, I'll say troublesome or, not as severe as, we thought they would be, which we're thankful for that. But I'm also thankful that we're still intending to, make inroads to still enhance, the loss of learning or the regression. So, I think the biggest challenge with that is trying to get the students to participate in the additional programming that we intend to offer.
So yeah, just to add a little bit to that, just to give you an example or to put it in context, we're inviting 150 students in grades 3, 4, and 5 in for summer programming, just from Cottage Lane alone, and we expect at least 100 to 120 to attend. And that's happening in all 4 schools. And so we've already hired staff, we have programming in place. So we're feeling pretty good about being able to get those kids in and help them catch up.
I think my fear is that we'll see more cooperation and support at the elementary levels, and at the secondary levels, I just see more distractions and more other opportunities during the summer for these students, and trying to get them to participate will be more challenging.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about that because Brian and I are navigating that with the team there as well. And so absolutely, Lonnie. So with the sports camps coming back, jobs opening up for teenagers, even kids that need to take driver's ed and get a driver's license because they haven't been able to do things like that. We're absolutely in agreement with that. That's why we're trying to find a nice balance of offering some coursework, some summer school up through Rockland BOCES to hit a nice balance of that, recognizing too that it is really good for our kids to go enjoy sports camps and do the types of things that they need to do to just kind of get themselves back to their new normal, and fully understanding that we will shift whatever we need to shift into the fall and or the spring of next year to address that learning loss as well. Agreed. That's already played out. The kids have been very clear about that.
And really the goal for this summer, if they're coming for a week or 2 weeks, is we don't expect that we're going to address everything. It's really to get them in, make them have a good time, good experience, and re-engage. Some of the kids haven't been in at all. And so we're trying to just, in some cases, just get them in the door. In other cases, kids have been in and we may be able to do a little bit more. So we're looking forward to it though.
All right. Thank you again. Appreciate the presentation.
thank you.
Mr. Jacobs, and Board of Education, if there are no further questions, this concludes the superintendent's agenda for this evening. It's now 8:45. I know we have a brief consent agenda for the board's consideration. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you. Before getting into the consent agenda, I'd just like to ask the other board members whether there's any committee reports. Dr. Stepanian?
Yeah, there was a professional development committee meeting last week. And I took some notes because there's a lot to report on, a lot of good stuff to report on. I think it's worth saying to, and I know it's just a committee report, but personally, I think that PD is one of the most important investments that we can make. When we talk about, that our students are the reason for all of this, but we can't do right by our students if we don't do right by our teachers. And so, I was really excited to hear that there is a lot of exciting things going on with professional development, which, personally as a teacher, I always loved these kinds of opportunities. So I'm excited that we have a lot of good opportunities for our teachers. One of the biggest takeaways is a planned shift in moving to more asynchronous learning, which will give teachers more autonomy and more ownership over the choices of PD that they're going to do. And I think it's great that it's also going to come at a large cost savings because we're not hosting these, having a consultant come in for hours at a time and hosting these big meetings that take teachers out of the classroom and away from the students and require having to have substitutes in the room. So I'm excited to see where that's going to go this year. We also talked about that there's work happening on training on equity and diversity and aligning that with the New York State Board of Regents Civic Readiness Initiative, which I did some digging at, which looks pretty exciting too. And then the New York State Culturally Responsive Sustaining Framework. I had to write that down so that I remembered the right name, which is basically academic access and success for all students. So, what could go wrong with that? So there's just a lot of really positive things going on. And I thank Dr. Kulat for all his hard work with putting this together. So. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Any other committee reports, Ms. Lee?
Yeah, there was a Rockland County School Board meeting on the 10th. The press release from the Board of Regents about the diversity, equity, and inclusion that Dr. Sapanian mentioned was also quite discussed. There's some really interesting and I think helpful resources within that, such as definitions and some guidelines. They also talked again about the Undoing Racism training for board members, which is supposed to be excellent. I know the NIAC school had done that. So that was also discussed. Just a reminder again that June 2nd will be the Rockland County School Board annual meeting. We are honoring our food service teams, and in South Orangetown, that'll be Mary Mills and Heidi Bishop. So, not that it's been a, extraordinary year for everybody, but we didn't want to single out one for the other, but we have recognized many different groups and functions in the past. And I think food service this past year with all the great work they've done with supporting the community with food banks and so forth is really commendable. So anyway, that will be on June 2nd. Also want to mention, there's a lot of discussions about, school board elections and budgets. I know some of the districts had done theirs last week because of the Jewish holidays, but let me see. The last thing, I was brought to our attention that Senator Melnick was proposing a bill to have the immunization data into a direct download. Probably Dr. Tessick knows about this more than I do. And that'll apparently really support the nurse team because they have to download each data individually. I'm not really that versed in this subject, but hopefully everybody's hopeful that bill will pass and that will really streamline a lot of the work for the nurses. So I think that was it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Henry?
Regarding the facilities committee, I think most people know, but work that we thought could be completed during the summer of 2021 won't be able to be completed due to New York State approval and also supply chain issues with materials. So that work will be done throughout the year.
Yeah, just adding to that, I participated in that facilities committee as well, and you know, we were extremely disappointed to learn that the work that was originally scheduled for the summer would have to be postponed into later into the year and into the summer of 2022. But one of the things that we also did discuss at that meeting was trying to establish a schedule going forward that would allow more time for the state education department approval of the drawings and more time for, you know, project selection and inclusion and, you know, budget for financing it, so that, you know, although the schedule has been pushed, I think there was some positive outcome of the meeting that we, you know, hopefully have established a schedule going forward that will allow us to resume our past history of always performing, you know, either, you know, maintenance work or renewal work or new work during the summer period, and take advantage of the building when there's, you know, no students in the building, limited staff in the building, and, you know, the contractors can go in, do what needs to get done, and get out in the most efficient and cost-effective manner. So, you know, although we did have the setback and we sent the postcards out, you know, regarding the setback, you know, there's some light that did come of it as well. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Henry. Are there any other committee reports? Seeing no indication, the next item on the agenda is the discussion of any agenda items or changes to the agenda if necessary. Is there any, you know, thing we want to discuss about the agenda before getting into the individual items? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 6 through 9 and the H-19 Committee on Special Education addendum?
Make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any new business that we want to bring up at this point in time? Just one of the things to make sure that we get on the agenda as we start talking about our schedule for either the summer or next school year. The boards discussed the desire for some board training, whether it be part of a retreat or, you know, maybe some other topics that the board members have that they'd like some focus on. You know, I think we're all aware at this point that, you know, Mr. Henry's decided, you know, not to, you know, continue his tenure as a board member, so we'll have a new board member as well. But I think, you know, one of the things we should all think about is what kind of, you know, format would we like to see the training take place, and what would be some of the topics that we would like to see addressed. And I would just ask that we try and get in front of this, you know, because my concern is that as, you know, meetings start to take place back in person, there could be a demand on any of these facilitators and so forth. So, you know, I don't want Dr. Pritchard to, you know, secure a facilitator without knowing what the subject of, you know, the training should be, because we want to make sure we get the facilitator that has the right background and expertise. And Dr. Pritchard, I also throw that out to you and your cabinet as well, that if there's some topics that you believe or your cabinet believes that would be appropriate for the Board of Education, we would be receptive to hear what your input would be as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. And I think probably a good place to start, because there's a history of experience that I think is relevant, would be the New York State School Boards Association. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there's also a sort of a speakers bureau that they can provide to us. So we'll construct, a plan forward, and we'll work closely with the Board of Education, and we'll help to contribute to those topics. And we look forward to that.
A suggestion that I might have is as part of the board report, and I'm not saying the board report is this week coming up, Dr. Pritchard, but where we get a page on facilities, a page on safety, maybe create one with some potential topics and concepts and so forth that the board can start adding to and reviewing, and maybe put some preference into ranking them to some degree.
That sounds great.
And then once we do identify the new board member, maybe we could start looking at our calendars and secure a date, because I know calendars are tough these days. So and so if we start tracking it on the side, I think that'd be tremendously beneficial for all of us. Okay. Any other new business? So seeing none, it's a little before 9 o'clock. I don't know if Ms. Gary just walked out of the room to see where we are with the budget vote and so forth. But do we have an idea before I call for a motion to adjourn to a recess? Do we have an idea as to how long the recess may be, in case there are some people listening that want to know when we're going to come back with the budget results?
Mr. Jacobs, Miss Gary did just step out, and I think she took two of our associates with her to go collect ballots and secure ballots. So there's obviously some travel associated with that. And we will be, I would say, minimally safe guess would be at least 45 minutes, because we will be doing some counting. So my sense is that the board at the earliest would be approving, or I should say accepting, the results of this evening's vote, probably no earlier than 10 p.m.
Okay, all right. So based upon that information, may I have a motion to adjourn to a recess that right now we're anticipating will be about an hour? It's 8:58 at this point in time. So I would anticipate that we would reconvene to a public meeting at 10 p.m. So just for clarity, so may I have a motion to adjourn to a recess?
Lonnie, before that, were we planning on going into executive session?
Dr. Pritchard, do you have a matter for executive session?
So, Mr. Jacobs, I know that there was a sensitive topic that we had requested to have a conversation about for a matter pertaining to a student that would probably take no more than, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes to just give the board an overview or some background information regarding the matter.
So let me rescind the request for a motion. I think that's the proper Robert Rules of Order, because there was a motion on the table. So if I retract that motion and modify the motion for a motion to adjourn to executive session for a matter relating to a particular student, and after we adjourn from the executive session, we will adjourn the public meeting to a recess till approximately 10 o'clock. So I would ask for a motion now to adjourn to executive session for the matters of a particular student. And then when we come out, we'll have a public session where we'll adjourn the public meeting to a recess. So for now, may I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussions of a matter of a particular student?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.